All right, sisters and brothers, we are back live in Georgia. Getting ready for these runoffs. A lot happening. We're gonna get into it again, and we're thankful to be able to come to you every day from the Black Church PAC bus and back on the bus today. He loves it so much he comes back on the bus uh, from House of Hope, Atlanta. Our brother, the Reverend Dr. E. Dewey Smith. Doctor, how you doing today, man?
I'm great, Reverend. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. What's going on now? The bus is parked in your backyard today, right?
Absolutely. We're in DeKalb County, right on the Fulton County, DeKalb County line in Decatur, where it's greater, about 10 minutes east of downtown ATL. So we're here, 4650 Flat Shoals Parkway, Decatur, Georgia, in Metro Atlanta. So right here on our campus.
So what are you all doing today? Are you all doing giveaways today as well?
Absolutely. Had a long day. It's been we've been out here in the community for a long time through our outreach center. So of course providing food. We also provided toys in a project called the Angel Tree, which is an initiative for us to provide Christmas supplies and toys for children of incarcerated parents.
Mm-hmm.
Also had a flu test, free flu shots given today here at the church, and also we had a communion and oil drive-by, so people can pick up the elements of communion for us to take together during worship tomorrow. So pretty full day, to say the least.
So speaking of worship, what do you all do, Pastor Smith? You all are still virtual, correct?
Yeah, all virtual. Everything's virtual. Absolutely.
Everything's virtual. Okay.
Yeah, our numbers are still rising here in Georgia, and we have a pretty large contingent of older people, and we just we just gonna trust the science, and
right.
And we're not with how the present administration has handled this so irresponsibly, and so we just want to prioritize public safety, and we've done that.
Since you mentioned the flu vaccine, do you foresee or have you begun to think about whether or not when it gets to this COVID vaccine? Well, first of all, I'll ask you if you and your congregants intend to take it, and if so, if they make it available to churches, do you think for people to come to church and get vaccinated, do you think that's a good idea?
Well, I've got to be honest. African Americans have had challenges in terms of trusting the government with anything that pertains to our wellness or our wholeness.
Right.
So that fear and that trepidation is real. And I'm trying to work through that. I don't want to be pessimistic. I want to lead people the proper way. I want to lead people to follow science. I feel better knowing that there's a new administration in place. I feel better seeing some of my friends and members who are in the medical community who vouch for it, and who are not necessarily conspiracy theorists.
Mm-hmm.
I still do have some of my own personal issues and thoughts about that. I will not dissuade people from doing it, but I'm not sure if I'm ready to open up the facilities for us to do that here on our premises.
It really is a wait and see situation.
Indeed.
With our history. And I'll be honest with you, man, I even hear some white folks say it was developed so quickly. And Lord knows COVID's taken us out, but very few of our people were in the clinical trials, Pastor Smith. So the question becomes, there was no real test as to how it would affect us. And that was double-edged sword. We weren't recruited, and then some of us didn't want to do it. So, I don't know. So, that's something else. Like we've been saying on prayer call every morning, vaccines are one thing, but prayer is something else, because we still gonna need the Lord to help us through this and to guide us in this direction. Okay, so on the Georgia runoffs. So now the reports in less than 24 hours, we're hearing about these different counties: Muskogee, Clark, Cobb, and they kind of act like they want to raise some question about some of the early votes and whether they're legitimate and all of that. And it just goes to show that anybody who thought that Kemp or the Secretary of State were doing us a favor by not flipping the state for Trump in the general, they're back to their same old dirty tricks now, try to disqualify our votes, aren't they?
Absolutely. And a lot of the reasons why Kemp did not pursue further malfeasance is because he recognizes 2 years ago he's only in that position because of severe criminal, severe suppressive tactics.
Yeah.
And it was sickening to say the least. And I really wish we had a functional Department of Justice at the time, because I really think a serious investigation should have happened. He's only there because you talk about stop the steal. Kemp is only in office because of something that was stolen.
Yeah.
And so I think because of political pressures and knowing that this race was so strong, he knew that charges would have been filed, and that, so in order to keep some of the heat off of him. So it's not like he didn't want to do what he did.
Right.
No, that wasn't his preference. If he had his way, he would have continued to have his head so far up the president's rectum that he could probably kiss his esophagus. So this was only because of the pressure and the fear of criminality and being in prison. So now this is a little less obtrusive, I guess. And I think they feel like they sense the power has been taken from them. Mm-hmm. But the counties you mentioned have historically been red counties, and our people have. We got some sisters, Stacey Abrams, Latasha Brown, and others who are on the ground, Tamika Mallory, who are doing some incredible work. And a sleeping giant has been awakened.
Yeah.
Same thing even with Hillary Clinton in 2016. She just couldn't galvanize the vote. She was not an exciting candidate for a lot of young people and millennials, etc. We didn't come out. But in DeKalb County alone, in 2018, Stacey Abrams only lost by 50,000 votes. Yeah. So we just took it for granted. But that's one of the things I think that Trump has done. He has awakened something within African Americans to make us realize that we have to come at ease and Zion. And if we don't step up to the plate, America really is going to be great again, and we'll be back in cotton fields. And so I think that's part of the lure and part of the trajectory that is happening for us politically and socially here.
What would it mean to have a member of the clergy like Reverend Raphael Warnock in the U.S. Senate? How will that impact our lives and our communities, and also, for that matter, the Black church?
Well, first of all, I've known Raphael for 32 years. We were classmates. I met Raphael in August of 1988 as we were students at Morehouse. Mm-hmm. He was a sophomore when I was a freshman. We served as chapel assistants together at Martin Luther King Jr. International Chapel. We served under our dean, Dr. Lawrence E. Carter. I know who Raphael is at his core in terms of not just being prophetic, but being concerned about equity, being concerned about humanity, compassion and empathy. That's what I know. And what I realize, I struggle now because I realize as a person of faith that we tend to want to use theology as the basis of public policy. And the older I get and the more I tune into what's happening here in America, I'm really not excited now about theology and policy being intertwined. Even though I respect who Raphael Warnock is theologically, I respect him more from a perspective of empathy, humanity, and compassion. And because whenever personal theology is used to form the basis of public policy, the question you got to ask is, whose theology are you going to use? And so for me, I know who Raphael is as a person. I know that the Constitution affords us freedom of and freedom from religion. And he's going to do all he can to ensure that everybody finds equity in this system. And he's going to stand against those who've been marginalized and disenfranchised. So to that regard, his emulation of the field preacher from Galilee is necessary because he's going to try to make sure that we all see the imago Dei in every human being. And so I think for the Black church, it's important because I believe it's going to be the redemption of America. And I believe it allows a prophetic voice, because what we've seen is the evangelicals have been really forming the basis, and this whole white Christian nationalism, it's been the basis of a lot of policy. And so to have someone to balance that equation from the church, I think is very powerful.
If your ears were burning around 10 o'clock last night, I was on a Zoom with some folk and we were talking about that. And I quoted you. Wow. And what we were talking about the other day, because some folk were were saying that the black church isn't doing all it should and not being all it can be, and young people are not as involved. And I was saying to them, I said, but no, I want to disagree, especially now, because what we're seeing in Georgia is something very different. You and I quoted you bringing up the relevance of the black church now when we talked on Tuesday, and how, you know, when it comes to what we are presenting, this is not a moment for the whole prosperity thing, but rather, as you said, empathy, and compassion, and I even made the case that, and I agree with you, you know, theology shouldn't necessarily inform public policy per se. When we think about it, Pastor, we look at our history as a people. The black church, black theology has always been about public policy because it's always been intertwined with trying to get us free, you know, and which was a political thing, getting us free from slavery and prey, having the hush harbors and the secret things going on. I even said to this group, and I wonder if you'd agree with me, the thing about the black church, even for folk who don't go to church like they should, there is no denying the role the black church plays in our community as an organization when it comes to crystallizing, you know, our needs and aspirations. And I was saying, you just look in Georgia, people are voting in Georgia right now largely because black churches in Georgia are organizing and promoting and centering people around that. Now, whether they sitting in the pews, you know, remains to be seen. But I think that's the kind of thing that ultimately will make people come back and say, well, maybe I do need to go back and to the place that my grandmother used to take me to. You know, I thought I outgrew that and I'm too cool now to go back to church. But maybe I need to go back and reconsider, because this is really what you're doing, and what the churches in Georgia are doing is really making a difference. And as you said, ain't just for Georgia, ain't just for you and me, ain't even just for the black church. This is going to help the whole of America, even say white folks from themselves, if Warnock and Ossoff get in there and get a majority in the Senate. Amen.
I mean, you said a whole lot. I mean, a lot of times when we see polls about young people, millennials, and Gen Zers who are not involved in church, I mean, the same people who are doing these polls and these exit polls with elections, I mean, often we're not included in the research process, as you mentioned earlier, even with the vaccinations. And so I think when you talk about people not attending church, I think we have to really be more critical of those sources. Now, I do think that's somewhat of a fallen way. I do think that young people may not be as excited as we were, but to say they're not involved, I think that may be a misspeech, and that may not be rooted and centered in research. But I agree with you. And even in the pandemic, if I may add this, because you said a whole lot, what I'm really seeing is the pandemic has forced us to be about church.
Yeah.
The pandemic has stripped us from a lot of the silliness that we did in church, and some of the ecclesial, you know, jargon and calisthenics and stuff that we've done. It's made us stop having church and start being at church. What I've seen in terms of outreach, what I've seen in terms of civic engagement and prophetic ministry, for me, has been refreshing, and it's almost been as if it's been a revival. And I don't know a church that's not in the community, trying to feed, trying to make sure people are clothed. Not how big our revivals are, not how many people showed up in Sundays, not Doc, I killed them. You know, no, it's been about really us, because it's made us do our mission, and it's made us become church. So I think it's kind of unfair. I think something has shifted past 9 months, and I also have seen us come together and collaborate more.
Yeah,
as I said to you the other day, I think some of the gains we made through the civil rights movement made us more insular and less communal. But even this black church PAC, they have pastor to come together to get behind a candidate when we don't, you know, typically, you know, in some cases it's been that we won't do it unless what does it benefit me? Who gets the title? Who gets the position? I'm not seeing that in this instance. I'm seeing a sincere desire for community, a sincere desire for mobility. And I think the other thing, when I talk about policy and theology, for us, you're exactly right. Our theology has formed everything for us. Yeah. But our theology has not been empowered. So it's been a supremacist and nationalistic and oppressive theology that in large measure is in the places where policies are made. And so that's why you hear me push back on that partisan piece, because there's no theology in there to baptize the theologies that have been used. One of my friends said something about the Southern Baptists. He made a decision he's going to pull out the Southern Baptists because of the presidents of Southern Baptist institutions and universities coming out against this critical race theory and really trying to push back against social justice. And he made a startling statement. He said, when did the theological architects of slavery and white supremacy develop the character enough to teach the church or the world how to discern, how to discuss race? And so again, that's my point. When you talk about the Southern Baptist Convention, they were the theological architects of a philosophy and ideology that perpetuated slavery. So that cannot be the basis, or that theology cannot be the basis of public policy. And so to that end, to have someone like Raphael Warnock, who can come from the Black church, who knew about Cain and Cone and liberation theology and Howard Thurman and God being the God of the press and Jesus and disinherited, who comes in the lineage of a Jeremiah Wright, who was maligned and beguiled 12 years ago, who understands prophetic ministry and who has what Brueggemann called that prophetic imagination. That, I think, can be a cure and a panacea to help sanitize it. But it's going to be hard to do that when you got 400 years plus of that type of doctrine and that type of concept. So that's why I'm just concerned that even with Raphael Warnock, when he makes it to the Senate, that although he will be able to make a difference, and one man, really excavate centuries of marginalization and state-sponsored religion, state-sponsored murder. And that's why I'm really concerned about this whole piece now with theology, until the equation or more theologies are included that deal with the equality for all people, which I'm not sure we'll see anytime in the near future. Yeah.
Pastor E. Dewey Smith, folks, brother, we so appreciate you. Give us a little tease. What you gonna preach about tomorrow?
That's a great question. Tomorrow, ironically, I'm doing a message about the shepherds and how, when you think about the class system that was even prevalent, when Pompeii fell and after the fall, after Alexander the Great's death, and you had the Hasmonean and Maccabean eras and ultimately Greco-Roman domination in the first century, and a caste system. And Jesus is born into a context when you have Pharisees and the Romans and the Sadducees and the Essenes and the Zealots and the Sanhedrin. And then you got this loaded category of people called shepherds, marginalized, disenfranchised shepherds, the lower rung of that caste system, shepherds, analogous to lepers, having to be 6 feet away from society. You talk about social distancing. If the wind is blowing, it's 100 feet. Shepherds were deemed unclean ceremonially. Shepherds were not even deemed credible. If they had to come to give witness in a lawsuit, they were not even deemed credible to be witnesses. And yet the night that Jesus is born, the angels and the angelic host does not appear to Greco-Roman aristocracies or the procurators of Rome, but this marginalized, disenfranchised group was filled with the glory of God. This marginalized group were invited to see baby Jesus as he lay before the wise men got there from the east, and they were given a great assignment to go and give the story about Christ's birth. And so it's redemptive that if God's glory can appear to the shepherds and be shown round about the shepherds, and then I believe that same glory is coming to this context as African Americans, as minorities, as people of other disenfranchised communities, whether it be through race, culture, religion, sexuality, the immigrants, that when we are considered shepherds, that the glory can appear to us, and we can still be the first to have a Christological observation and then go and tell that he's the one who brings joy and peace into the world. So I think it's a great message of just empowerment, that no matter who you are, where you're from, that the glory can appear to you, and that you can be the first to see him and go and talk about Jesus of Nazareth and the Jesus of Nazareth and the power that he brings into the world.
Yeah. Amen, brother. But we appreciate that. I like that. You're going to preach that tomorrow. I like that approach to shepherds. I might steal that, but I'll wait and preach it next Christmas since you're gonna preach it tomorrow. But I was taking notes while you were doing that. That's what preachers do, y'all. We borrow from each other. That's another custom in the black church. Amen. No, that's beautiful, brother. You know, and it goes back to Cone and Warnock. You know, it's about, and Howard Thurman, the disinherited. You know, I keep telling folk, it ain't about, you know, the rich and famous and powerful.
Absolutely.
It's about the stories in the Bible are about folk like us.
Yes, sir.
So we appreciate that. We thank you for spending these moments with us, and we thank you for everything you're doing down in Georgia. Everybody should take note now that you know, brothers like Pastor E. Dewey Smith and others in our churches in Georgia are helping to make this happen. E. Dewey Smith is not going to be a senator, but he realizes the importance of making sure that our people have representation in the halls of Congress, in places of power, because as he said, our opposites are coming for us. They haven't stopped. So we've got to cover all the bases. And then it just doesn't stop after January 5th. And we know that. So my brother, we so appreciate you. And I've really enjoyed spending this time with you this week. God bless you and everyone in House of Hope and your family, praying for a wonderful holiday season and especially a wonderful service tomorrow. Okay, Doctor?
Thank you, sir. Thanks for all you do. You're such a liberating and such a necessary voice. And I thank God for you. Thank God that you can tell our stories and speak in such a way that we can be empowered and made better because of who you are, what's in your heart, what's in your mind. So thank you. Please continue, because we need forums, we need portals, we need sources like yours that can help turn the tide in this world. So God bless you. And I'm honored to have this opportunity to share your platform.
Thank you, Pastor. I appreciate those words. God bless you. Okay, thank you. All right. Pastor E. Dewey Smith with us, folks, down in Georgia. Let me just update those of you. Brother Marlon Milner is going to join us, but as he comes, let me share this with you. So folks who are living in Cobb, Clark, Gwinnett, and Hall counties, as well as Muskogee, are being challenged. They're trying to challenge votes and voters, early votes. We have reason to believe, and well, most of these places are folk who look like you and me. So this is what they're doing. So don't get comfortable and assume that Secretary of State or any of these other people were our friends because they didn't turn the Georgia vote over for Trump the way he wanted them to. So we're going to have to remain vigilant on all this, and it's still very early, but as we get more information, we will share. And it's having to do with the change of address situation, and it's probably even illegal for some of these counties to go try to dig up folks' address and find them in violation, and then put the burden on the voters to prove who they are. But we're going to be watching that very, very closely as it develops. Joining us now, a former pastor and city council member in Norristown, Pennsylvania. He is currently a PhD candidate in religion at Northwestern University, Reverend Marlon Milner. Reverend Milner, how you doing, brother?
Reverend Thompson, I'm doing well. It's great to be with you. I've admired your work, your political work, your media work for many years now. And even during the pandemic, I've been following some of the work you were doing, curating discussions with Rainbow Push, important conversations where we needed to know about resources and actions to take as people of faith, as people who care about public policy. So I'm just glad to be here and talk with you while we're out here literally in these streets trying to motivate, trying to touch people's lives about the coming of our Lord, and also engage them and encourage them in their civic duty to vote.
Amen. Well, I admire you and your work too, my brother, and congratulations on working on that doctorate too, man. We need more of that. We need folk in the in academia and elsewhere to continue to raise up folks like Warnock, you know, who went to school under James Cone. We need some more James Cones out here.
Absolutely. You know, Reverend Thompson, there wasn't a question in there, but if I could riff off that for a moment, the work I do, some of the fundamental work I do, you know, I've pastored in the Baptist tradition. I've worked in the Episcopal tradition, but I'm a third generation ordained Pentecostal, apostolic Pentecostal minister. And what I know generally about our traditions and we as Black people is we don't know our stories well enough. We don't know our history. We don't know our teachings and philosophy. And so, for example, what Reverend Dr. E. Dewey Smith said even before he joined you today, he did some remarks outside talking about how Dr. King Sr., Daddy King, was the pastor of Greater Travelers Rest before he was the pastor of Ebenezer. And so even Dr. Smith's ministry has a legacy with social justice and social activism and Black clergy who are committed to issues of change in our community. And so often we don't know those stories. My grandfather, who started his church under a tree in Martinsville, Virginia, those small towns along the Virginia-North Carolina border, those were some of the most important towns in the civil rights movement. And my grandfather connected and partnered with Presbyterian pastors and AME Zion pastors and Baptist pastors to lead what one professor at Morehouse, where I studied coming a few years after Dr. Smith and Reverend Dr. Warnock, what one history professor called the indigenous civil rights movement in so many cities. Right there where you are in the DMV, one of my heroes that I study is the late Bishop Smallwood E. Williams. People don't know that 395 doesn't end the way it was intended to end because of the power of that man to literally move a highway, right? But he was the president of the SCLC at the heart of the civil rights movement, right? He was a comrade and a confidant with Dr. King and Dr. Abernathy and Congressman Fontroy and others. And so many of these persons and movements are not even known, even when people start to talk about the movement and talk about leaders. Black women are often marginalized. So it's just a rift to say in this moment, you know, one of the ways we can fight back on this, again, these mischaracterizations. Since I got here on the ground to help with the campaign, I've seen how they're trying to use Jeremiah Wright all over again. And I'm like, you can't even do it. Even the way they've tried to get 10 seconds of Dr. Warnock, he's such an astute and articulate preacher and pastor and prophetic spokesperson that it still doesn't convey the ignorance and ugliness they want to try to mischaracterize it as. It conveys this sense of hope and faith and critique. I mean, and really it's no different than Jonathan Edwards talking about sinners in the hands of an angry God. Why do white men that people think made this country great get to say this country's under judgment, but people who've been oppressed and subjugated don't get to offer a legitimate critique and a pathway for us to be a better people, better community, and a better country? But when we don't know that we've been doing that and doing it in places where we don't normally look, like Pentecostal traditions or with women's voices or with queer voices and lifting indigenous voices, then we lose the conviction and clarity that really all of our voices have always been there, offering both critique and hope. And so my work is really to just, you know, add a chapter, a slice, and raise voices.
Well, and as we say, every round goes higher and higher. So, you know, from your grandfather in Virginia up to where you are now, to where Warnock is, you know, being elected to the Senate is one thing. But it will also be, that election will also serve as further history making, further acknowledgement as to the role and power of the Black church and its history, because it has always been, the Black church has had no choice but to always be acting in a revolutionary way. And, you know, we always hear about all the illegalities that were beset upon us during slavery, when we were enslaved people, from reading to marriage. But truthfully, church, the way we know it now, the way you just articulated, and the way we preach, and the way Pastor Smith preaches and Jeremiah Wright preaches, that was illegal. And, you know, everything had to be approved by the master, and they'd stand there and watch you in service. And then the only other opportunity was to go down near the swamp in Hush Harbor to have secret service and to plot escape. So it was always clear. Our exegesis was always, white man read the Bible one way, the slave master read the Bible one way, and then we read another way. So now this book to us says we got to escape. It don't say we need to stay here. So it speaks to our own agency, and I think it will further make a very powerful statement for someone ordained in the church, a pastor at Dr. King's family church, and one who learned, and we probably not supposed to say this out loud so after he's elected, but you already said it. One who learned from James Cone. Now y'all forget I said that now. But the point is that to have someone who comes out of that tradition in the Senate, and that's Pastor Smith, I was saying, that ain't just gonna help us. You know what I'm saying, Brother Melder, that's not just gonna help us, because when you lead and you govern with that level of compassion, you know, all citizens are better off. All citizens are uplifted. Some folk gonna get health care in spite of, I don't want that Obamacare, but you're getting it now in spite of yourself, and you know you need it. So that's the beauty of this whole thing. And I think this is putting the institution back in its proper light for people. I was just saying to Pastor Smith, I was talking to some folk last night. Some folk, oh, black church, they ain't doing this no more. The black church ain't doing that. Black church is irrelevant. Untrue. And even those who ain't in it every Sunday realize now what's going on. I don't think anybody can deny the force and the power of the black church when we're at our best in doing what we need to do. So brother, no, what you're doing is important. We appreciate you. How's the crowd out there? How are people responding? I'm curious, as you're there, is that all everybody's talking about in Georgia? I hope so. Are people just buzzing talking about this special election?
I think there is an energy in our faith communities. We've been to 3 faith communities just today, and we'll go to several faith communities, Christian faith communities, tomorrow. And I think there's enthusiasm. I think there's a sense of determination, a sense of, you know, as the song says, I ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. People are talking about they've voted early. Some of them have voted early by going to early voting precincts. Some have voted early by requesting mail-in ballots. But I think there's a determination. There's a focus. There's a collaboration. We did an event earlier today that involved people from Black Voters Matter Foundation. And so there's a commitment, whether you are Black Voters Matter, whether you are New Georgia Project, whether you're Fair Fight, whether you're the Black Church PAC, that we're not competing against each other because we have the same goal and the same aim. In the case of the Black Church PAC, we're able to focus on African-American faith communities and other faith communities to mobilize them. But I think what we're seeing is energy, and it, you know, as been well documented now, it's not an energy that just came through November.
Right.
People like Stacey Abrams and many unsung and unnamed people that may even have legacies back to the traditional civil rights movement from 55 to 60. This has been a long time coming. Atlanta and Georgia, you know, these red clay hills are sacred space for political mobilization and activation among African Americans. So this is, you know, Stacey knows that she stands on the shoulders of sheroes and heroes who have paved the way for her. But we see people who understand that we can't take it for granted, that we can't wait to the last minute. Let's vote early. And if we have to vote on January 5th, let's have a plan to vote and let's be ready to vote. So.
Yeah. Dr. Milner, it's a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you for spending time with us, and all best wishes to you as you pursue your doctorate. And we look forward to many other great contributions from you to our people and on behalf of our people, brother, in the tradition of your great family. Okay.
Brother, thank you. Thank you for what you've been saying and doing and the platforms on which you operate and how you continue to bring faith and public policy and advocacy together and inform the general public that we can't just pray with our mouths, but we got to also pray with our feet.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right, Dr. Milner. Thank you so much, brother. Dr. Marlon Milner, he's studying he's getting his PhD in religion in Northwestern, and down there bringing us the good word. And now here's our brother who's been organizing on this Black Church PAC bus and all these different events and laying all of this out. He's down there on the ground. He's left, you know, where he normally is to be there in Georgia and facilitate all of this work. So what exactly all is going on today, Pastor Barrett Berry?
Man, it's been a marvelous day. We, like Marlon said, we started off early this morning, toy drives in the community at Red Oak United Methodist Church in Stockbridge, Georgia. I didn't know Stockbridge, Georgia even existed. It's in Henry County. I'm learning my way around. When I was in college some 20 plus years ago, it was not a majority Black community. Now it's 60% Black. And Stockbridge is the largest city, and it's 80% Black population, and they're creating their own little Wakanda there in Henry County. Very impressive with the elected officials and the churches coming together and creating a new community right outside this south of Atlanta, in the suburban community there. Learned about that today. We went from that church to another church and met with it at Tabernacle of Praise, where T.G. McBride is the pastor. And they were giving away toys, angel tree toys, to children whose parents are incarcerated. Mm-hmm. And they were doing that today. And everyone had already voted who served. Everyone I talked to had already voted, and they're encouraging people to vote at the same time. And then we come by here at the House of Hope, and man, a beautiful campus, beautiful set of people here. They had not seen their congregants since March. And so they're passing out oil and praying for people here and offering flu shots and really encouraging people to vote. Everyone that on the staff here that I talked to, and there's a lot of people, have already voted, and we're encouraging people to vote here. It's just it's hard for me to imagine people say the church is not relevant anymore because of the activities that we are witnessing. I think people just aren't aware, because what I'm seeing is that the church is at the forefront. I don't know anybody else at the forefront. We're offering so many services, feeding hundreds, thousands of people on a weekly basis, and providing the things that we're supposed to do: clothing, shelter, food, and the like. And so I've been encouraged, and it's been challenging me as a pastor to go back and say I need to do more with my church. So it's been a great experience.
Yeah. And brother, we're thankful for what you're doing, and we're thankful to the Black Church PAC and Pastor Mike and Leah Daughtry and others who are organizing. This is very important. They are down on the ground in Georgia, so helping to get that vote out. We're going to be looking very closely at these counties in the hours to come that are trying to mess with early voting, and that's a sign that it's making a difference.
That's right.
That the numbers are going up. Now, are you all near an early voting location today?
Not the other two places we were.
Okay.
Today, we came in. I don't think we were at an early voting place because where the church is situated. But excuse me. It's not an early voting place, but it is a polling place on January 5th.
I got you. Okay.
They'll be able to vote here on January 5th as well. But this is a pretty big piece of property here. It's impressive to see what they're doing in Georgia. These black churches are really doing a great ministry for God's people here.
So now, the places where you were earlier, where they were early voting sites, did you get a glimpse of how the turnout was this morning?
High turnout. I mean, that's another thing. The people are coming out to vote, and many people have already voted so far here in the early voting process. Half, about 50-50 or so, 50% each of mail-in ballots and also in-person ballot voting. It's impressive that people are taking this serious. It's hard to find somebody who has not already voted in some capacity.
Really? That's good. That's good news. Yes. All right.
And mindfully, we are in the Atlanta area. Majority of people I talk to are black folk, but right now what I'm seeing is people are voting in high numbers, and so we're encouraged by that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Brother Osar, we appreciate you too, as always, brother. Thank you for bringing us this and report. Now, where are you going to be tomorrow?
Yeah, today we're not done yet. We're going to a concert today at the South Lake Mall. People come out to Morrow, Georgia. It's an explosive concert that's taking place there today. It's not our event. We're going to come and support it. And like today, we were part of our events today here with the Black Church PAC, making sure people were getting the oil and preparing for worship service here at the church. Because Dewey Smith is one of the leaders of the Black Church PAC. But they're going to a concert. But tomorrow we'll be out in McDonough, Georgia. We'll be out with Pastor T.J. McBride at Tabernacle Praise Church. We'll be there in the morning, and we're giving out toys again in Stockbridge, Georgia tomorrow, and do that from 10 to about 12. And then we'll leave there. And we'll go out to, that's 12 to 2. That's after service. 12 to 2 tomorrow. And then at 3:30, we'll be out at the Dream Center with Bishop William Murphy is the pastor there. And they're giving away 2 cars tomorrow. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah.
And they're expecting 2,000 people. We're going to give away toys and food and 2 cars, 2 brand new cars are being given away tomorrow. So you want to be at the Dream Center tomorrow. I say get there early. The doors are actually open at 4 o'clock. The bus will be there at 3:30. I say get there at 3 o'clock. I'm certain it's going to be thousands of people present for that. And then Monday, We'll be back in Columbus, Georgia again. So we're making our way around the state.
All right. Brother, thank you.
No, thank you.
We appreciate you. We will check in with you tomorrow. Hopefully join you from the Dream Center.
Yes.
And the Dream Center is in Atlanta. I mean, it's
in Decatur. It's not far from where we are right now.
It's right in Decatur. Right. So folks, if you know loved ones, be sure to let them know what's taking place tomorrow and get involved. I know everybody's got cabin fever. Get on out and go to the Dream Center tomorrow. Go out today. Those of you know folks in Albany, they'll be in Albany in the morning. And you can go and see the Black Church PAC bus and our brother Osahar, Pastor Barry. Thank you, brother.
Like Mark, you gonna wait till next year to preach that Christmas sermon? I'm preaching tomorrow, and I'm going to use it.
Well, it's polite to let the person who gave it to you preach it first.
Right. Well, I'll wait.
Just polite.
30 seconds. He'll start right before I preach it, and I'll just join in. I've been busy on the road, man. I'm trying to study, write, prepare, while I'm doing these other things at the same time.
I know that's right. I know. So right. Well, you be careful, brother, and you get ready. And again, we thank you, man. Okay.
Bless your hearts, man.
All right. Folks. We thank you for joining us. We'll do it again tomorrow, and glad all of you could be here. If you know somebody in Georgia, you do, a friend, loved one, family member, whatever. Talk to them, ask them. Don't just call and talk to them about the weather and what they cooking and what they eating and whether they watch Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. Everybody should watch it, but also ask them if they've gone out to early vote for Warnock and if they voted their Ossoff for John Ossoff. So be sure you check in with them to do just that. We thank you all. We will see you tomorrow.